When I was 6 years old, I was plagued with sore throats. Mama was constantly treating me for fever and sore throat. She took me to Kingman to see Dr. Donley. He diagnosed me with swollen adenoids and tonsils and told her they were causing the fevers. He told Mama the tonsils would have to be cut out. What? I was scared, and I started to cry. But Dr. Donley gave me a cherry-flavored sucker, and I couldn't cry and lick the sucker at the same time. Dr. Donley was pretty smart like that. I even forgot why I was scared. So early one morning, Daddy and Mama and I drove in the Henry J. to the Kingman Clinic. I had a nervous feeling in my stomach. Mama had made me a pretty pink dress, especially for the occasion. It was sleeveless with wide straps over my shoulders and a wide cloth belt to make a bow in the back. I sat in the front seat of the car. When I looked up at the windshield, I could see my reflection in the glass. I was thrilled with that pretty pink dress and kept smoothing it down over my knees and admiring it in the glass. When we got to the clinic, the nurse showed me and Mama to a room with a bed, and Mama helped me change out of that dress and into my pajamas. Daddy picked me up and set me on the hospital bed. Mama told me the doctor was going to fix my sore throat. That made me feel better, and I wondered if he'd give me another sucker, so I wasn't scared anymore. Pretty soon, Dr. Donley came into the room, and he was dressed funny. He had on a blue robe that fit over his clothes and tied behind his neck, and he had a funny white hat on his head. His nose and mouth were covered with a mask, but I knew who he was. He told me he was ready for Halloween all dressed like he was. I giggled. He modeled his outfit for me and even twirled around in the middle of the room for me to see. Finally, he asked me if I was ready. I was. He picked me up in his arms and carried me down a long hallway. Daddy walked right beside him, so I wasn't afraid. Dr. Donley took me into a really cold room and laid me down on a hard table that was covered with a sheet. Daddy couldn't come in with me, but it was okay. Doctor asked if I'd like to have a mask and hat too. I said, "Yes, please." Mine was different from his, though. My mask was clear, and it had a hose that kept pushing cold air into it. He strapped it on my face with some stretchy cords that went behind my head and held the mask to my face. I could feel the cold air blowing on my nose and my mouth. He asked me if I could count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next thing I remember was waking up in a little room on a bed. Mom and Daddy were there with me. My throat hurt, but was different from my sore throat somehow. Mama kept giving me some cherry-flavored crushed ice to suck on. It helped make the pain go away. Daddy gave me a little red piggy bank. It was so cute. I kept it on my bed and showed it to everyone when they came into my room. Soon, nurses and doctors and other visitors would throw a penny or a nickel on the bed for me to put into the piggy bank. My brother Tommy and sisters Phyllis and Lonetta could not visit me in the hospital because they were too little. But Galen and Betty Parsons came, and so did my cousin Linda Skirbitz and Mr. and Mrs. Ingram, Vicky's mom and dad. I showed them my little piggy bank. They, of course, donated coins to my collection. After a couple of days, I got to go home, and my little red piggy bank was bulging, heavy, and full. Daddy said I could buy something with the money in the piggy bank. The next Saturday, Daddy and I walked across our backyard and the alley, and then behind the barber shop, across Main Street, and into Mr. Ferguson's drugstore. I was so excited, but I waited my turn while Mrs. Ferguson helped other people. Mrs. Ferguson was polite and friendly to everybody. Daddy and I looked around the store and talked about things I could buy. After a while, Daddy and I were getting closer to the checkout counter at the front of the store, and I could see dolls on the shelf behind Mrs. Ferguson. Oh, how pretty they were. There seemed to be hundreds of dolls, all dressed differently. Some were dressed in frilly dresses, and others had on coveralls with brightly colored shirts. I decided to buy one of those dolls. Daddy said, "You have enough money to get one doll. Pick out the one you want. We'll ask Mrs. Ferguson to get it down for you." But oh my, how hard it was to decide which one. Daddy told Mrs. Ferguson that I'd been to the doctor and he took my tonsils out, and that I had been a very good girl. Mrs. Ferguson was very patient with me as I asked to hold one dolly after another, trying to decide which one I wanted. Finally, I told Daddy I wanted the one in the emerald green dress. She had red hair like mine. It was time to pay. Daddy asked me where my piggy bank was. I had left it at home for safekeeping. Daddy laughed as he paid Mrs. Ferguson for the doll out of money he had in his pocket. He said, "You can pay me back when we get home." I'm not sure I followed his train of thought, but I got my pretty doll. I was happy. When we got home, Daddy told me to go get the little piggy bank. We sat at the dining room table, and he showed me how to separate the coins. A few quarters, mostly dimes, nickels, and pennies. He counted out the money to repay himself for the doll, but when he shoved just a few coins back in front of me and told me to put them back into my piggy bank, and then started to put the rest of the coins in his pocket, I put up a fuss. I did not understand why Daddy was taking my money. He patiently explained, "Donnie girl, I paid for your pretty dolly with my money, so you need to give me some of your money to pay me back." "Okay, Daddy, here." I slid 1 quarter, 1 dime, 1 nickel, and 1 penny over to him and patiently put the rest of the coins back into my piggy bank. Daddy began to laugh. He laughed and laughed, but I got to put all the coins back where they belonged, back in my piggy bank. Rich as Rockefeller. Daddy teased me for a long time after that by telling adult family and friends about our dealings for my pretty doll. He laughed every time he told someone. Donnis knows how to get other people to spend their money on things she wants without actually spending any of her own money. She's going to be rich as Rockefeller one day. I wasn't sure what Daddy was talking about, but I was happy because Daddy always laughed when he told the story. Chapter 13. God damn it, Donnis. I grew up in the heartland of America in Cheney, Kansas, just 25 miles west of Wichita. I attended school in the 1950s and 60s. The population of Cheney at that time was around 1,000 souls. There were very few activities outside of church and school for youngsters. My sisters Phyllis and Lonetta and I enjoyed belonging to Brownies and Girl Scouts. Our brother Tommy joined Cub Scouts and then Boy Scouts. In addition to belonging to Scouts, Tommy had the added benefit of playing baseball in the summertime. Daddy loved sports, and when he was in school, excelled at them. When we kids were little in the summer, Daddy played softball with other Cheney men and played basketball with the Boeing Bojets in the winter. Our family always went to watch him play. When Tommy got old enough to play, Daddy coached his baseball team. Daddy always let all the boys play at least a little while during each game. Since Tommy was the smallest boy on the team, mostly he sat on the bench watching the rest of the team play. Because Daddy was coach, our whole family would attend Tommy's team practice and the games. When Phyllis and I got bored with sitting and watching, We'd go under the bleachers and chase each other around playing tag. There were usually a gang of other kids under there with us. It was fun. I was always a little jealous that only boys had baseball teams. Even without many organized activities for young people, we were never bored. We knew how to entertain ourselves, especially when we were little. One day, my sister Phyllis and brother Tommy and I spent the afternoon in the yard. One of our favorite things to do was for one of us to sit on our butt on the bristles of a broom while the other two grabbed the handle of the broom and ran as hard and as fast as the two of them could pull together, dragging the rider around the yard. Round and round, swerving and swaying, back and forth across the yard we would go, trying to make the rider lose grip and fall off the broom. When the rider fell off, their turn riding was over, and he or she had to get off, and it was their turn to pull someone else. Of course, Tommy always wanted to be the rider, and when his turn came to pull, there was always an argument. Many times we'd run into the house screaming at Mama, our version of the argument, and, in order to be heard above our screeching, she yelled for us to settle our own battles and sent us back outside. We wasted a lot of time getting Tommy to grab the handle of the broom and to be a puller. It usually ended with Phyllis and I just pulling each other and shoving Tommy away when he wanted to join in. We threatened to never pull him again if he didn't take his turn pulling. Eventually he came around and began to help pull. We played, laughing and giggling and arguing until Mama hollered for us to come in for supper. The nearest swimming pool was in Kingman, about 18 miles west of Cheney, and Mama did not have time to take us there or to Smoots Creek right out of town so we could play and splash in the water. Besides, Mama did not know how to swim, and there were a lot of us to watch over, so she waited for a time when Daddy could take the whole family. So some days when afternoons were hot, Mama hooked up the water sprinkler and turned on the water. We spent our time running back and forth through the water spray, jumping over the sprinkler. One afternoon, I spotted a weed in the yard that Daddy called sheepshire. The plant was light green, looked like a bunch of small clover, and had a few little yellow flowers on it. The whole plant was edible and tasted sour and a little bitter. "Hey, Tommy, come here. I want to show you something," I yelled. He was about 4 years old. "Look here, I ate weeds." While Tommy watched, I ripped one of the weeds right out of the ground and stuffed it in my mouth. I knew what to expect. Daddy had shown me, and I was prepared for the taste. But Tommy had never tasted it. I knew Tommy was questioning me eating weeds, so I grabbed another plant and began to munch on it. "Yum," I said. "Good stuff." Never one to be outdone, especially by me, his arch nemesis, and a girl at that, Tommy dug a plant out of the ground and stuck it in his mouth. I watched with great anticipation, figuring I knew what was coming. I could barely contain my amusement. Finally, the taste got to Tommy, and his face screwed up tight, and he began to choke and spit. He couldn't spit the plant out of his mouth fast enough, so he began to dig it out with his fingers, spitting and coughing and spitting some more. "Dod damn it, Donnis, dod damn it," he swore between spitting. We were not allowed to swear, and usually we did not, but he was 4 and he was mad. He ran over to the sprinkler, picked it up, and took a big drink of water directly out of it. All the while I laughed and laughed. I had to hold my sides to keep them from hurting. The harder I laughed, the madder he got. His face turned bright red, and then he came after me. It took him a while as I ran ahead of him, but he finally did catch a hold of my shirt tail and drag me down to the ground. He sat on me and began to hit me. He was only little, so his hands didn't hurt very much, and it made me laugh even harder, and he got madder. "Mama," Phyllis yelled, "Donnis and Tommy are fighting. Come quick." Mama ran out of the house and came over to where Tommy was sitting on me. He was swinging away with his little hands, and I was laughing. She pried him up off of me, grabbed me by the arm, and yanked me up. "Now what in the Sam Hill is going on here?" Mama asked. All three of us tried to tell the story at once. As she looked back and forth at each of us, she got more confused as time went on. I don't think she really knew what to do, but she took a traditional way out. She yelled at Tommy. "Thomas Eugene, you do not hit girls," she said as she grabbed him by the shoulders. "But she started it," Tommy tried to tell her. Mama would not listen. At first I was gleeful. Here I had started a ruckus and Tommy was getting in trouble. I loved it. But when she started to whip him, I couldn't just stand there, so I stepped in front of her. "Mama, I did start it." Finally, she calmed down enough to hear me out. "I ate that sour grass and he tried it too. He didn't like it and it made him cough and spit. I laughed at him and then he got mad, so he came after me. I'm sorry I didn't tell him it was sour in the first place, instead of just letting him taste it." Most summer nights were spent outdoors. After dark, Daddy would help my brother and sisters and me catch lightning bugs. Daddy would use a nail to punch holes in the lid of a mason jar and put grass in the bottom of the jar. We older kids would help Lonetta catch a couple of bugs and put them in her jar. Sweet Lonetta would just hold her jar and admire the firefly as it crawled around the grass and light up from time to time. Not me and Tommy, though. Usually we'd pinch the little butts off the lightning bugs because the butts would continue to shine and we'd stick the butt on our finger like a diamond ring. We could not have been richer. We played yard games like Red Rover and hide-and-go-seek or tag. When we were little, sometimes Daddy would lay on his back in the yard and pull his feet up behind his butt with his knobby knees sticking up in the air. Daddy was 5'11" and pretty thin. Each kid would take his turn to run with all his might straight at Daddy's knees, put our hands on his knees, tuck our head down between his thighs, and kick our feet. Done correctly, we flipped head over heels over his knees. He would catch our backs and lift us up over his head and set us gently on our feet. Then we'd run back and get in line to do it again. Sometimes, if we were clumsy, or one of us started before Daddy was ready to catch, or he missed catching our back, that kid would fall on him and usually ended up in a heap of giggles and human flesh. He usually took advantage of our vulnerability and tickled us while we were down. Of course, that led to the rest of us rushing in to help until we were in a dog pile giggling. Truth be told, he probably got kicked in the head many times by an over-anxious kid. When we got too big for this game, Daddy would stand on his hands and knees in the yard, while one of us would run hard at the side of him, plant our hands on the ground, and flip over his back. We played until we wore him out. When we were a little older, Cheney kids could safely run together all over town until the streetlights came on, as long as we stayed within the city limits. Sometimes I would go to one of my friends' houses, and some nights they would come to ours. We were supposed to stay outside to play, but if one of us Slusser kids went into a house, even with a friend, we were supposed to call home and let Mama know where we were. We had to be careful and watch that we behaved, because if we didn't, our misdeed would reach home before we did. Mama used to say, "The tail of the bird gets home before the bird." That meant for us that if another mother in town saw us misbehaving, she would get on the phone and call Mama. And when we came in the door, we were usually in trouble. Mama and Daddy already knew what we had done. Mama would do the same thing for someone else's kid. Mothers in town watched out for all of us kids. Life wasn't perfect for us. We had our squabbles and fusses as a family, and with so many kids, money was pretty tight sometimes. But we had parents who loved us, and a daddy who sometimes was just a big kid himself. He liked to play with us, and we had a lot of fun, and now lots of good memories. I've been telling stories since the age of 3, and I'm happy to have published the books of my father, Max, brother Tommy, and sister Lonetta Slusser Knutson. All of our books are published through Amazon and Kindle. www.amazon.com/author/Donnis Crane.